Hello and welcome to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm your host, Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Now, you know we're getting deep into the political season, and you know how much I love politics. And so we've got the primary that's coming up next week. And to that end, we have the candidates from District 1 on today, and we're going to begin with Margaret Farmer, who is one of the candidates running for District 1. And we're going to talk to her about a whole host of things. We're going to talk to her clearly about politics, but we're going to talk to her about having boots on the ground when you talk about municipal government and how important municipal government is and what people really want to see and get from the elected officials. So without any further ado, Ms. Farmer.
Nice to see you again.
So nice to have you here. So talk to us about the whole act. Before we get deep into the politics, talk to us about the process. How do you feel about actually being out there campaigning and talking to your neighbors?
I love it. I have to say this has been absolutely wonderful. You get to know your community in an intimate way that you thought you knew it before, but walking every single street in your neighborhood, walking every single street in the city, you just get to meet so many more neighbors, learn of places, little hidden gems that you weren't aware of before. So I have to say, no matter what happens, I'm going to be very sorry that this is over, because I've loved every second of it.
What actually compelled you? What brought you to this point that you figured that you wanted to run for public office?
Well, I have been active in the community of East Boston for many years. I've been president of a neighborhood association. I helped found the nonprofit Eastie Farm. I'm on the Chamber of Commerce board. So I've worked to improve my community. And East Boston is experiencing an unprecedented level of development. And while this has been going on, we've been saying to the city, what are your plans for this? How is this going to be handled? What's going to happen when this occurs? And it's been very obvious that there aren't a lot of those answers. And that brings a certain amount of frustration. But it also, I think, brings a lot of opportunity for someone like me who knows the community so well to come in and say, we can see what's going to happen. There's going to be a huge influx of cars. We can see that there's going to be a number of students who need to go to school, and can really step forward and make a positive change so that we don't have a crisis. There's been a crisis in the East Boston for some time in regards to the tunnel. And I think that's a great example. It could have been avoided. So that's what I'd like to do, is improve everyone's quality of life.
Well, let me ask you about this, speaking about development, because one of my concerns is this. You have generations that have lived either in Roxbury, East Boston, Charlestown, Chinatown. Because of the development that's coming in and some of the high-priced developments and high-priced condos, what I'm realizing is people can no longer afford to live in those communities. And not only is the family now forced to move out, but the fabric of the community is becoming tattered because those people that have been there for generations can no longer thrive there. What's your thought about all of these developments coming up and the inability of people to afford to live there?
So I'm not against development. I'm against bad development. I think we've all seen what that looks like. But I think that there are things that we can and should do to ensure that people have the ability to afford either a condo or a home. They need to have that ability to stay in their community. To me, it's important that we try to affect the market. I know that there's other things that we can do, but when you change and affect the market, you ensure that it has continuity. Number one, people are competing with students like crazy. Students come in, they're willing to pay $1,000 a month per student. You know, that's why when someone has a 3-bedroom apartment, they think it's worth $3,000 a month. Whereas for a working family, that's an $1,800 or $2,200 apartment. So one of the things is I would push universities to build dorms. These students should be on their campus. They should, you know, and let's be honest, college kids do stupid things. I'd rather they see a dean than you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing is we're in a speculative real estate market right now.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we're in a speculative real estate market is because they know that they can build units and that they don't actually have to rent them to individuals. They can rent them to corporations for corporate rentals, and they can rent them for Airbnb. So I would immediately, on stepping into office, I would move into both regulating and taxing Airbnbs. Because suddenly the idea, and this is going to lead to more revenue for the city. It's going to be revenue that comes from people who are coming from out of the city, so it's not a burden on current residents. And it ensures that we have a bit more continuity in the value of these properties. Also, the mayor wants 53,000 new units of housing by 2030. We all know this. We've all read about it in the newspaper. And there's a goal in there for affordable housing, and yet everything that's being approved is luxury.
Right, right.
I want to see a goal and a measurement of what is workforce housing. What is housing exactly? Housing that's meant for working individuals.
That's right. Because affordable is not affordable for everybody.
No, it's
not. You know,
not.
what they're saying is affordable is not. So you do need that. You call it workforce. I call it low and moderate income housing. Basically the same thing.
Absolutely.
You know, and I see that these young families, you know, you recently married, they may have one child or two small kids. They can't afford to live there.
No. They make too much money for affordable, but you don't work at Google, you don't work at Amazon, so you can't afford the luxury. So it's what's here in the middle that we need to be worrying about. And I have an idea. I'd like to see, there's a lot of people who push for density. They push for more and more units when they're a developer and that's what they want. I'd like to have a pilot program where if you have a certain level of density and you're a transit-oriented development, you're really close to a T station, that you are not eligible for resident parking permits. Because the biggest issue when people have that density is they're like, these people are going to bring cars, these people are going to bring cars.
Right.
And if we're able to say, we know they won't bring cars, or they're going to have to pay for private parking, that ensures that people are living a car-free lifestyle. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, it would lower the value of those units in the marketplace. Okay. Now, the developer's happy because they're getting more units.
Right.
And the public is happy because you're getting more people, but they're not bringing cars. And because they have a lower value, that's a possibility for especially young professionals.
But aren't people attached to their cars? I've heard people talk about a car as if it were a family member. And what I mean by that is, say you want to take a weekend trip to Maine. You know, how do you get there?
So in this day and age, you've got Uber, you've got Lyft, you've got Zipcar, you can rent a car from anywhere, you've got Hubway. I've been car-free as a lifestyle for, I'd have to think about it now, years. It's been long enough that I don't think about it. You know what? It's a choice. It's a conscious choice that you are going to live without a car. And some people, that's not going to work. That's right. Some people, they're never going to do that. But there are plenty of people, especially the age range that we're talking about, you know, the 20-year-olds who are like, I'm coming to Boston, I want an opportunity to buy in, or I've lived in Boston my entire life, I've never gotten a driver's license. This kind of housing would be perfect for them.
So this is what I want to do, because we don't have a lot of time today. So I'm going to hit a couple of topics, and if you can give me an answer on how you feel about said topic, then let's move on to the next one.
Sure.
Let's talk about immigration. And you have a pretty significant immigrant population down in East Boston, if I understand that correctly.
That is correct.
How do you feel about what's going on, particularly with the national government and the like, with wanting to deport people?
So, I mean, I support the law. You're a lawman. I'd never look you in the face and say you should break it. But at the same time, I think we've created a very difficult situation. There's no clear pathway to citizenship. So when we say to people, oh, you should become a citizen, there's no clear way for them to do that. I believe that ICE and our local police need to remain separate. I don't care who you are, you need to be safe here in this country, and you need to understand you're safe. And if something happens to you or crime, you need to be able to walk into a police station and report it. And it doesn't matter where you're from or how long you're here or anything like that. Everyone needs to remain safe. I think that as much as I have mixed feelings about our current president, I am incredibly hopeful that the DACA will go through Congress and will become law, because I think that these are individuals who are the future of America.
You almost think that it has to, frankly. At least I do. I mean, anything can happen down in D.C. at this particular point in time. That's true. But like you said, this is what, 700, 800,000 people. They actually didn't ask to come here. They are here. They are contributing citizens. And so then to send them back to a land that they've never been to, you know.
In many instances, they don't speak the language. They've never been there. And in order to be a part of this program, you have to have a clean record, you have to have a job, and you have to pay a fee every 2 years. I mean, these are people who are willing to be here, that they want to be here in the United States, and they're doing everything that we're asking of them. I would like to throw in there that my brother is a veteran, and one thing that does anger me is that there are individuals who fight for our country and are not guaranteed citizenship, and that I disagree with. As you walk out of the armed services with a honorable discharge, at the same time, you should have the ceremony that makes you a citizen of the United States.
Couldn't agree more.
That, I think, is something that should be unquestionable.
Pay equity. Where do you stand on pay equity?
Pay equity?
Yes.
Well, I'm a woman, so I think we should be paid equitably.
Well, let me rephrase the question then. what do you think about the difficulty with which we are arriving at pay equity? How nonsensical is that?
I have to tell you, it is a bit of a surprise. I think that some of it, I know there are people who say, oh, women, they don't ask for more money, but that's something that can be changed. I think that it's a cultural, I think it's a cultural idea that, oh, women can be paid less. But I think that, I think it's a detriment.
That's an asinine idea.
Well, yeah.
I mean, look, there's data that speaks to the fact that if you have more money coming into the household, a lot of good things happen in that household. And to say because of gender, two people doing the exact same job, one gets less, to me, I just don't understand it. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
I think that the thing that employers need to realize is that you're going to lose a good worker, because in order to have that raise or in order to have that pay equity, people are going to leave. In the same way that companies want employees to have loyalty to them, companies need to show loyalty to their employees. So I think that that's when they're really going to change, when they realize that there's competition for quality employees, that there's competition for people who are qualified, and that if you want to hold on to them, that line's got to be the same.
Before we came on air, we were briefly talking about transportation and the transportation system. Talk to me about your views on the transportation system and why it isn't flowing as smoothly as it could.
Absolutely. I think, to me, transportation is really about equality, because everybody has to get somewhere. And I think that this is one of those issues that if you make it better, everyone's life is better. Kids trying to get to school, seniors trying to get to the grocery store, people trying to get to work. We are growing as a city here in Boston. The entire city is growing. And we are not making infrastructure investments to ensure that people can get where they need to go. And we really need to be sure that we move people, not cars. And we know this is difficult because, funding comes from the state, from local, and also from the federal government. But we need to strive to make more options. I am a huge proponent of a Boston Inner Harbor ferry. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to in Charlestown that tell me they have to have a car because they work in the Seaport or Kendall Square and they just can't get there. So let's give them another option. The Blue Line is constantly packed. It's going to reach capacity because of the development actually in Revere very quickly. So an Inner Harbor ferry would give us another option. And I can see that a great deal of the funding for that would actually come from private developers who would want that dock right outside their front door. So this could be a public-private partnership. And now, yes, the city would have to make investments, but if the bulk of that was covered by developers, by outside companies, Vertex Pharmaceuticals in the Seaport provides a shuttle bus for their employees. I'm sure they'd be happy to cut down on the shuttle buses and put them on a boat. I think we could see some real success there. And I know that people are not always in favor of bike lanes. I'm a fan of. I'm willing to go out on that limb. I believe in promoting bike culture. I don't always think that a bike lane on a street is the best choice. Yeah. There is actually an abandoned commuter rail line in Charlestown, which I think would make a fantastic bike lane and would get people off of the street. So then we're building one bike path as opposed to bike lanes on Medford and Main Street. We'd be able to move more people with a smaller investment of funding.
So let me ask you about this. During the tenure of Mayor Menino, you had the mayor that was described as a strong mayor, and you had the city council, which was described as not as strong. You have a different mayor now, Mayor Walsh, and there may be more going on between the mayor and this city council. Talk to me about where you stand on the form of municipal government. City council, that is the closest I believe that our elected officials come to their constituencies. Talk to me about municipal government and why you chose to go after this particular job versus going to work at the State House.
I went for this particular job because I think that I am incredibly qualified for it. And I know that I can do a good job. As someone who's been active in my community, working with the city for a number of years, I know I can walk in and understand what needs to happen and make that happen. There would be a learning curve for me at the legislature. There would be a period of time I'd have to figure out how things worked. But I know I can step in here and make a positive difference from day one. I think that, yes, Mayor Walsh is the most powerful mayor in this entire country. It's simply the way that our Constitution for the City of Boston is written. Or charter, pardon me. That's the way it is. However, the City Council still has power over the budget, and that's a mighty
deal.
sword.
Big deal.
That's a mighty pen
Yeah.
to wield. And we are also out there constantly in our constituencies. We're out there interacting with our constituents and finding out what's important to them, and really being in front and have the opportunity to be in front of the issues that not only they deal with today, but they are going to deal with in the future. And I think that is knowledge that the mayor recognizes. I mean, he's incredibly busy. The city of Boston is growing, and so that provides a link for him. And I would look forward to working with the mayor.
So let me ask you a two-part question about healthcare.
Sure.
Now, as you see, you hear in the news that the Republicans are now trying again to get rid of Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Plan, as it's called. Where do you come down on healthcare? Talk to us about that.
I am grateful that I live in Massachusetts, that we recognized many years ago that a single payer is the way to go. Mm-hmm. And I support all efforts to try and ensure that remains in place. I think that we gain nothing by penalizing people who have a pre-existing condition. There are babies born with pre-existing conditions. There's no fault there. Right. So, and denying them coverage for a period of time only ensures that they're going to become more ill and require more health care over a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. I think it's the future. I think that sometimes people don't want to embrace the future. Mm-hmm. And part of this is because there's an incredible amount of money involved. But sometimes the amount of money doesn't equal the amount of lives.
So when you talk about incredible amount of money on the part of the insurance companies,
Absolutely.
The doctors, the pharmacies, who, where?
Oh, absolutely. The insurance companies are making money. Mm-hmm. They're paying lobbyists, and those lobbyists are pushing mm-hmm. issues in Washington. Mm-hmm. So, Medicare currently doesn't have the ability to negotiate for prices of drugs. If they were to have that ability, Medicare is one of the largest insurers in the United States. Right. If they have that ability, could you imagine how much that would cut into the profits of insurance companies or of drug makers? Right. They don't want that. Right. For them, it's about making money.
Second part of the question is this opiate scourge that is running rampant throughout this country. We just can't seem to get our arms around this thing, but we have to address this because it's really destroying not just families, but
entire communities.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts on this? How do we get our arms around this? How do we remedy this situation?
Absolutely. Before I ran for public office, I worked for North Suffolk Mental Health Association, and we provided a variety of programs, but some of those were inpatient and outpatient intensive recovery programs. Okay. So I've dealt personally with people who are dealing with this crisis, and there are a couple of things we need to do. But the first one, and the most important, is we need to increase the number of recovery beds. When someone says that they are ready for treatment, when someone says, I want to make a change, you have to get them into treatment quickly. That's right. Within hours.
But you know what? But I also believe that they need to be there for more than just the 28 days or whatever. It takes a lot longer to get off of this stuff. 28 days, in my estimation and what I see from the perch that I sit on, it's not enough.
So everyone is different, so there should be a variety of different options. Okay. And by the variety of different options, I mean, yes, you go to detox, but whether or not you then go to a sober house, or you go to an intensive inpatient, or you go to intensive outpatient. Mm-hmm. It should be whatever is most likely to be successful for the individual. But you are correct. We do need to ensure that a treatment is available for a long period of time. Yeah. There are some people, they've been struggling with addiction for a decade. You can't expect
some longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can't expect someone to change their life in a month.
That's right.
When they've been on drugs for that period of time.
That's right.
You need to help them learn a new way of life.
That's right.
They need to make new friends. In some instances, they need to get a new job and live somewhere different because their dealer was down the street and they can't be that close. But the most important thing, we need to increase the number of recovery beds. I actually have a friend whose father struggled with alcoholism for many years. Mm-hmm. And there came a day that he was ready to make a change. And he went to the ER. And at 12 hours, when he hadn't received a bed or assignment, he walked out and said, I guess I'm meant to keep on drinking. And it was, now thankfully this story has a good ending. I wouldn't tell the story if it didn't.
Yeah, okay.
So 2 years later, he again said, okay, I'm willing to make a change. Right. And the family was able to find a private program for him. So it did end well. But how much time, that's 2 years.
Yeah.
That's 2 more years of his
That's right.
life that he
That's
could have
right.
had with his family.
That's right.
So number one, we're talking about increasing recovery beds. And that's referred to as rapid access treatment, by the way, is we need to implement that. I'd like to see the Angel program that was instituted in Gloucester. I'd like to see it here down in the city of Boston.
Yep.
Many times people want to receive help and they don't know where to go.
That's right.
So why not have them walking to the local police station and see the police as a partner in getting better?
That's right.
Absolutely.
You hear this stuff about, well, they're coming in and they've got drugs and they've got their paraphernalia, therefore they should be locked up. What are you serious? That's ridiculous to me. When people are looking for help them. At least that's what I believe.
Absolutely. And I'd rather see them walk into the police station and have it be properly disposed of than have a kid on the street find a sharp, than have someone else find their paraphernalia. I would rather it be disposed of and gotten rid of and have that person enter into recovery. Also, we need to train doctors. Doctors, many times, they don't, they have a standard way of issuing prescription medication after a procedure. And giving them the education to know, okay, you should only be issuing 4 days, and then you should have a conversation with them about, okay, are you still having pain, or is it maybe time to go to Tylenol?
Okay, I've got to move along. Let me ask you about the legalization of marijuana. Where do you stand on that?
Well, the Commonwealth voted, and I would enforce the laws as they are written here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Working for an organization that deals with individuals that struggle with substance use, I will say that to me, the issue of young people using marijuana is still something that cannot be forgotten, no matter what happens. The idea that young people think that it's okay, that it's not going to hurt them, is incorrect. It does hurt them. It has long-term effects on the brain. So although adults, an adult over the age of 25, say, wanted to choose to use recreational marijuana, I can't stop them. I wouldn't do that. But under the age of 25, kids' brains are still growing.
They are. It's
and
true.
I would really like, actually, the Commonwealth to take that into account when they're writing the laws that they are working on currently.
What gives me pause about that is the manipulation of THC, that substance inside of the drug. And, with these, what do you call it, edibles and the like, you can really jack up the percentage of THC, and that's what really scares me. For a variety of reasons, but as you mentioned, we have a lot of college kids here. We have a lot of kids in the Commonwealth, period. And to have all these kids hopped up on this sort of stuff is just scares the heck out of me. I got to tell you, frankly.
And also be aware that one good thing that would come out of having regulated marijuana shops is that marijuana on the street is occasionally being mixed with fentanyl. Which is
bad stuff.
Yeah, which is a very dangerous drug.
Yeah.
And they're doing that because they want to make the marijuana more addictive.
Yeah.
So at least if someone was buying it from a shop, we would know what was in it. So I don't necessarily see it being as a terrible thing, and certainly someone who makes that choice is not a horrible person. But yeah, it's a complicated issue.
Public schools versus charter schools. Where do you come down?
So I'm not against charter schools, but I'm against how they are currently funded. Currently, in November of November of the school year, we write a check to charter schools for however many students they have in there.
Right.
Now, the day after that check is issued, if a child returns to the Boston Public Schools, the funding doesn't return. So what's that leading to is that's leading to public schools being underfunded, and it's leading to charter schools in many instances receiving a profit. Now, I'm not against someone receiving a profit, but I am against it if you're doing this on purpose. I'd like to see charter schools paid on a quarterly basis.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to see them paid on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
So you're being paid for the students that you are providing a service to. The additional funding stays with Boston Public Schools because we will always provide a student with education, and it ensures that we are not running at a deficit.
I am concerned about some of the things that legislators have talked about with voting and voting rights, and who can and who cannot vote. Where do you come down on the ability to have our citizens be able to vote? I mean, I think that should be just a God-given right, frankly. I'm curious as to what you think about that.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's one of the most important rights that we have. And it's disturbing that there are individuals out there that would want to chip away at that.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. I think that it should be, we have incredible historic lows in voting levels, actually, which is also scary. So the idea that you want to make it harder for people who want to vote is even more disturbing. I'd like to make it easier for people to vote. I'd like to have same-day registration. I'd like to expand it so that you either have voting over 2 days, or it's made aware that there are places you can go before the actual voting day. If you know that you're going to be out of town on the 26th, which is our primary date next week. You should be able to say, okay, I can go to City Hall, I can go to like several places around the city and vote in advance. I give a lot of credit to organizations that have really worked to coordinate groups of people and individuals to get them out to vote. I mean, it's empowering. It's both empowering for the individual and it's empowering for the government to know that they have a mandate to incorporate everything that they've said they will.
Listen, I think you get the government you deserve. And if you don't vote, then you get what we have in D.C. Now, I'm not just talking about the president. I'm talking about the partisan divide, where these guys and ladies just can't cross the aisle and get anything done. And so that gives me serious pause because the globe is getting so much smaller now and everything is interdependent, you know, and we are, in theory, the biggest, baddest dog on the block, the leaders of the free world, blah, 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 then we need to comport ourselves as such. That's what I think. And so I agree with you. So look, we've got about a minute or so left. I want you to take about 30, 45 seconds, looking at that camera over there, and talk to the voters and tell them why they should vote for you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Steve. We've covered many topics today. However, I have many more on my website, which if you are interested in, I would encourage you to view. My website is www.margaretfarmerforboston.org. I have worked here in the city of Boston for many years as a community advocate, as an activist, trying to ensure that our quality of life as current residents is at the highest level it can be. I have worked with individuals and community groups to ensure that we have opportunities for children. I have founded nonprofit organizations to increase the amount of green space in our city. And I've done this because that's what I believe in, because I wanted to improve where I live and I wanted to give back. And I want to continue giving back. And I want to ensure that Boston still remains a place that we all want to live in 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years from now, as far into the future as you can think of. I humbly ask for your vote on September 26th in the primary for Boston City Council, District 1, and then again on November 7th in the final. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for coming on. I know you've got a crazy schedule. I've campaigned, so I know you're all over the place.
We are.
And you've got to make a bunch of stops, but I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to come and sit with us and talk to our viewers about who you are, what you believe in, and how you would be that public servant that they would see as the person to send to that office. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All righty. All right, folks, we're going to go to a break, and on the other side, we have another candidate running for the District 1 seat, and that would be Miss Lydia Edwards. So please do stay tuned.